Well, for more, we're joined now from Manila by columnist Richard Heydarian. He's the author of Asia's New Battlefield. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24. Are you surprised about what's unfolded?
Well, actually, personally, I've been warning the Philippine government since 2015 that the ISIS could be a factor here in Southeast Asia, and particularly in Mindanao, if the peace process doesn't move forward. And unfortunately, under President Duterte, who's the first president from the Mindanao region, he's a president who claims to also have Muslim heritage. The reality is that his priority for the past 10 months has been his war on drugs, his controversial war on drugs. And I think the peace process in Mindanao did not get enough attention that it deserved, and that created the kind of vacuum that has been exploited by ISIS affiliate groups like Abu Sayyaf and also the Maute group, which is now involved in the Marawi city siege and is causing a lot of mayhem. Now, what surprises me here to a lesser degree is the fact that while the siege and the terrorist attacks were in the Marawi city, Duterte immediately went to declare a martial law across all Mindanao, while Marawi city is just a very small part of the entirety of Mindanao. And the other thing is, why did he declare a martial law? Because under the Philippine Constitution, he has other legal mechanisms to mobilize the Philippines armed forces, such as declaring a state of lawlessness or a state of emergency. For you to declare a martial law, you have to provide an evidence to the Philippine Congress within 48 hours, and later on prove to the Philippine Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court steps in, that there is actually a rebellion or an invasion. So I think the only way for the Duterte administration to justify extending a martial law all across Mindanao is based possibly on an intelligence that suggests that ISIS affiliate groups have coordinated planned attacks across Mindanao. Possibly that's the case, but so far we see no details that has been forwarded by the government, and it remains to be seen whether the Philippine Congress and the Philippine Supreme Court down the road potentially will be provided with that kind of evidence.
And
so
you're saying he's got 48 hours to come up with that evidence?
Yeah, he has. That's what the Philippine Constitution says. In fact, the Philippine Constitution was to make sure that the martial law under the previous dictatorship of Marcos will not be repeated again. So there are a lot of safeguards there. But because Duterte has a lot of support in the Congress, I suspect that he will be able to get this through. But later on, the Supreme Court could come in and make it a little bit difficult for him. Now, Duterte is fond of braggadocio. I mean, he always says, I can ignore everyone that I want. But the fact of the matter is that the Philippines is still more or less a functioning democracy. So now you have like two parallel concerns. One is, what is really this ISIS threat in this country, which in my opinion is not yet in a very dangerous state yet. I mean, I think the Philippines is stage 3 out of stage 5 if it comes to creation of a distant caliphate. You have ISIS affiliate groups, you have ISIS already acknowledging their presence, but they are yet to get population and territory. They're not there yet. But still, there is the threat of ISIS affiliate groups, and that could expand if the government doesn't deal with the peace process issue and doesn't have an effective counterinsurgency. And inevitably, Duterte will need to get the help of the United States and other allies like the European Union to deal with this issue. And then on the other hand, the concern is maybe the martial law could be potentially extended all across the country if, God forbid, there will be attacks in other parts of the country. So there are two twin threats of nationwide martial law and the ISIS that the people are dealing with here in the Philippines.
And right now in Marawi city, it's a big city, 200,000 people. What's the latest you've heard on this?
I mean, the thing is that, I barely slept, since last night. Last night, early morning today at least, what the military of the Philippines said is that the situation is fully under control. But based on the information I'm getting from my reporter friends who are there on the ground, it seems the situation is not really fully in control. But nonetheless, I think we're moving from direct skirmishes between the Philippine military and the Maute group, or better known as the Islamic State of Lanao, to mopping out operation and freeing off the hostages. So there was a hostage-taking incident there, and I think 100 hostages have been freed based on the latest report I'm getting. I think, definitely the threat of like Mawete group or these terrorist groups really occupying large cities is not there. But definitely there are going to be a security threat all across, areas like Muslim Mindanao. But I am still yet to see any information that suggests that across Mindanao and beyond, across the Philippines, they could be a threat. But that's the contention of the Philippine government. But they have to prove that. They cannot just claim it.
Just very briefly, Richard, this is a country that it's the largest Roman Catholic country in Southeast Asia. Are ecumenical leaders, both Muslim and Christian, reaching out to one another at this time?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are some concerns of, deep-seated, I would say, discrimination or kind of biases against the Muslim minority is being rekindled. I mean, you could see it quite, ubiquitously in the commentaries of people, So there's definitely an effort by a lot of Filipino civil societies group to say, you cannot equate Islamic extremism to just ordinary Muslims. So those two are very different. And terrorism is a totally different issue. There is a pushback against that. Of course, even moderate Muslim leaders and also the Catholic leadership have always been engaged in this kind of interfaith dialogue. And in fact, other major insurgent groups like the Muslim Moro Islamic Liberation Front has consistently told the Philippine government that they're willing to help the Philippine soldiers
to take on Abu Sayyaf,
to fight against this terrorist group.
Richard Heydarian, many thanks for joining us from Manila.